It's a mock draft Monday here on Locked On Browns, plus the Joe Flacco signing, giving us some important insight into the types of quarterbacks that the Browns are pursuing. We talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering the Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land. And of course, on the road. It's a mock draft Monday. We are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. So we drop another one for you today, our second to last one for you today. Also, what the Joe Flacco signing tells us about the types of quarterbacks the Browns are pursuing, and Kenny Pickett doubles down. I do want to thank you for being every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, plus bonus content on some weekends as well. As I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast, and of course the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later on in the show. And yes, we have a new mock draft for you here in the final 2 weeks before the NFL draft gets rolling next Thursday. It's our second to last mock draft that I will do and conduct before it all goes down next Thursday. And we'll kind of go round by round here. I actually got some decent feedback on last week's mock draft. Like, people, I think, felt like it turned out pretty solid for the Browns. In when I posted on social media, there was a lot of responses like that. I don't know how people felt about it. Actually, and I should say, in the comment section at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel here, there was plenty of people who jumped in and said they thought it was actually a pretty solid, like, if that was the outcome, if those were the players that they came out with, they'd feel pretty good about the weekend as a whole. And that mock draft was one where I pretty much just stayed put at all the Browns picks. There was no trades up or anything like that. I did things a little bit differently this time, but there are some similarities with this mock draft as to the last mock draft. Let me throw it up here for you. We'll go round by round, break this thing down. And yes, I still do have the Browns going Travis Hunter at number 2, even though I emphatically said late in the week last week on Friday, when the Joe Flacco signing came down, that I do still think it means Shedeur Sanders is in play for Cleveland, because yes, I understand that some people sort of viewed it as, well, this means him and Kenny Pickett are going to duke it out for the starting job and they'll get a developmental guy. I could see where that maybe is like what you're sort of trying to do here, but I still think it makes it clear that Shedeur Sanders could be the move here, because you're adding a quarterback that then has a chance to start sooner rather than later, and that could actually compete with those two veterans that you have in the room to maybe earn the starting job. But I'm still, in my heart of hearts, I still believe Travis Hunter is going to be the pick. And so I had them going Travis Hunter at 1. That is obviously similar, or exactly the same rather, from last week's mock draft. So that brings us to pick 33. I did have the Browns staying put. I actually went into this one saying, if Shedeur Sanders falls, I'm going to trade up for him just to see what it would kind of look like, see what I could sort of get after the fact if I were to trade up for Shedeur Sanders, and what the rest of the draft would how things would kind of fall the rest of the draft. But he ended up getting taken by the Jets pretty, in the top 10 still, which I was kind of surprised it was the Jets, and he didn't fall to the Saints at 9. So I'm curious to see how that sort of shakes out anyway. But because he didn't fall, I stayed put at 33. I took Josh Connolly Jr. And right out of the gate here, you get a top flight player in Travis Hunter who can play two different sides of the ball. You get Josh Connolly, who fills a need at left tackle potentially and gives you another option there. And you get Young at that position. I thought about maybe trading up for him, because I still think it's valuable to do that into the late part of the first round to get that fifth-year option on a guy. But I ended up staying put instead, and I get Josh Connolly to start off day 2. And then I get my quarterback in the third round, pick 67, in Tyler Shuck. Now, PFF gave me an F for that pick because of how they had Tyler Shuck graded. And I will say, in the previous mock draft, he was available at 85, and I took him. He was available even later than that, and I took him. But I think that the quarterback market there's never like a good any of these like mock draft simulators, there's never a good like barometer on like how quarterbacks are really valued in the NFL draft. Like these guys always end up going earlier than what people expect. And I do think there's going to be that next run of quarterbacks is probably going to happen in like the second to early third rounds. And so I don't know that somebody like Tyler Shuck is falling to where maybe some places like PFF have him valued or graded. Like you can see it there on the graphic, like PFS Big Board has him as the 197th prospect. So yeah, like in theory, that means he's available in like the 6th round, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Like I think he's going to go probably 3rd round, maybe even 2nd round to some team. And so I had to get him a little bit earlier just to sort of simulate it more realistically. And so I get that done there. Now here's where my trade comes into play. I traded up from 94 to 85 with the Broncos. I gave up pick 192 and 216 this year. So the Broncos get a couple extra late round picks on top of it. I don't know if that would be enough to make this move. You're moving up pretty significantly, but it worked out in the trade simulator. So I led with it. And no, I didn't force the trade. I know you can do that in PFF's thing. I didn't do that here. I just sort of offered it and they took it. So that ended up happening. So I moved up to get DJ Giddens, halfback out of Kansas State, who I actually I've been watching a little more on Giddens. There's been so many good running backs. I haven't gotten around to doing as much work with him, but man, he is an athletic freak. He has a 9.78 RAS score, which is 43rd out of a 1,909 running back profiles dating back to the year 1987. So that's pretty damn impressive. He's a workhorse, has good size, runs with a lot of patience, and he waits for guys to sort of establish blocks. His vision and cutting is incredible, and he's more elusive than he should be sort of when things get tight or reduced. And he only had 1 fumble over the last 2 seasons. So that's really impressive. Ball security is a big thing with the Browns, as we know. There's a couple things he lacks kind of the vertical quickness and isn't able to necessarily like move side to side a lot, but I'm okay with that. Like I want a guy who can run between the tackles, hit the hole and go. And he does sometimes struggle in pass protection to help out quarterbacks. So there's some things for him to work on, but I thought the value was there. And the reason I traded up too was because I know this is a deep running back class, but it was getting to like slim pickings in terms of the guys that I value. And so I was like, if I don't want to wait another 9 picks to see if Giddens falls to me, I'm going to sort of be aggressive here, go get him and get myself a guy that I feel good about being sort of a workhorse back potentially for the Browns, or at least worked in, potentially even with Nick Chubb. Then the last 4 rounds, I get Ashton Gillety, and he is coming out of Louisville, a defensive end. I go sort of back-to-back defensive line by getting Ty Robinson at Nebraska, Luke Lachey, tight end out of Iowa. I know he's not graded as highly as some other tight ends coming out of Iowa, obviously, over the years, but chance to get a guy who I think Iowa's kind of considered tight end U, so chance to sort of see what you can do there. And then you get Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State, who I also mocked late in my last mock draft to fill sort of one of your safety spots that's a void for you with Juan Thornhill obviously leaving. But I liked how this kind of panned out. I went more defense late, obviously, because I went offense heavy early. And I actually really did like the Ashton Gillety pick because I think he has a chance, like value-wise. I think that was there at 104. And I think he has a chance to sort of be a rotational player for the Browns even in year 1. And I think there's still some areas to address on that defensive front as they fill things out. If you're not going to take somebody like Abdul Carter early, I think there's a chance to get somebody like Gillety and sort of help your cause there on top of Ty Robinson, with that very next pick. So I kind of looking back, I think I felt better about last week's mock than I did this week's mock. If I'm being totally transparent, that is how I felt about it. But I like who I came away with in this mock, and I think it still puts the Browns in a nice place to add some talented players who can potentially be impactful right out of the gate here, particularly early on in this draft. Somebody like, obviously we know Travis Hunter, what he can bring to the table. And I think if you're picking him at 2, he's going to start immediately. He's going to be an impactful player for you, especially as a receiver. Josh Connerly Jr., I think could be a guy that gets, slotted in there pretty early and starts for you and maybe becomes a staple on your offensive line for years to come. And Tyler Shuck's interesting because as I laid out on Friday, this room right now is reading like it's going to be an open competition between Flacco, Travis Hunter, Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and of course, whatever rookie that they're going to prioritize sort of drafting here. And in this instance, it's Tyler Shuck. And so maybe he earns that job, or maybe at some point they play him. Somebody who's 25 years old entering the league, you're going to want to play him sooner rather than later. So I do think we would see some of Tyler Shuck next year. And there's a chance that he maybe, seals that job and becomes a future quarterback for this team. So they're going to want to see him at some point next year. So I kind of like the way things fell in this one. Maybe not quite as much as last week, but I was pretty happy with it. What do you think about my mock draft? By the way, speaking of the quarterback room and the open competition that's likely to play out between Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and of course, whatever rookie they decide to draft, I think that the signing of Joe Flacco, one thing I didn't get to on Friday, sort of gives us a hint into the types of quarterbacks that the Browns are looking for in the NFL draft next week. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Did you know that your Amazon Fire TV stick is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab a paired controller, subscribe, or sign into an Xbox Game Pass with an EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all available to you on your Fire TV stick. With 4K streaming, with more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more, Amazon Fire TV Stick has everything you need for your at-home entertainment. I can speak to this. We are a Amazon Fire TV Stick family. We have one on all of our TVs in the basement, upstairs, in our room, everything. And it gives us a chance to watch whatever we want in the house at any given time, in any given room that we might be in. It is my go-to source for streaming devices. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox, Game Pass, Ultimate subscription, and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. All right, so we know Joe Flacco is coming to Cleveland. We know that the Browns signed him on Friday, and we know that it's a reunion with a quarterback that obviously the Browns have some familiarity with and feel pretty good about. Now, we talked on Friday about a number of things that this means, one of those being that I think it leaves the door open on Shedeur Sanders potentially still being in the mix for Cleveland at number 2 overall. They still could take a quarterback there. Signing Joe Flacco is not a move that screams like, all right, our quarterback room is good. It's a room like we're settled. It's a move that suggests, okay, we're sort of piecing this thing together. He's a bridge option. He's going to sort of provide some stability, some leadership, but it doesn't behoove us, if you're the Browns, from signing somebody or drafting somebody who could compete and play and take that job and earn that job and sort of learn the ropes as he goes and then be on his merry way as the team's starter or franchise quarterback in the future. So I still do think those things are true. But another thing that it feels like this room sort of tells us, or what this move sort of tells us, that I didn't get a chance to get into is the type of quarterback that the Browns are clearly prioritizing with their moves this offseason and what that means for the NFL draft. And Shedeur Sanders falls into this bucket, by the way. But when I think about Deshaun Watson being here in Cleveland and when he was the priority at the quarterback position, where they were really trying to build a system around him and they were trying to sort of make him as comfortable as possible here in Cleveland, they built the quarterback room with guys who had similar skill sets. Now, Jameis Winston last year was maybe the exception to that, right? Like, he's more of a pocket passer, but a guy who got along with Deshaun Watson, and that's part of the reason why they didn't bring Flacco back last year. They were trying to sort of make it this very comfortable quarterback room. But around that, it was like, DTR, guy who's mobile. His athleticism was something that made him an intriguing prospect. You obviously had Tyler Huntley, who they brought in last year during the offseason and training camp and almost made the team. Like, there was some talk that they were trying to shop Jameis Winston and Tyler Huntley, and nobody really bid on that. And so Tyler Huntley ended up being the one that they released. But, they tried, but they were putting these quarterbacks that have similar skill sets to Deshaun in that room. And I think the same thing could sort of be said about the year prior when you had like PJ Walker in tow and all these different things. So given how that kind of played out, this year, they're sort of going the opposite direction. To this point, the Browns have traded for Kenny Pickett, who is a pocket passer, guy who's going to drop back, stand in the backfield, try to deliver the ball downfield. And then the same thing is obviously true about Joe Flacco. We saw him in Kevin Stefanski's system. We saw him in Kevin Stefanski's offense, and they clearly wanted to sort of go back to somebody who they know can just run the offense efficiently, knows what to expect, and can deliver Kevin Stefanski's system in its purest form that they want to. So that sort of gives you an indication of yes, they're going back to Stefanski's standard offense. They're not doing all this gimmicky stuff where they're trying to like make it fit for Deshaun and tailor it to his skill set. No, they're going back to what they do best in Stefanski's offense, and Joe Flacco is part of that. But it also sort of gives you an insight into, as I alluded to, with the building of the quarterback room, like what types of players they're bringing in. It seems like it seems like they're looking for pocket passers in the draft this year. Like they're not going to do this, let's go get the freak athlete and see if we can like build the offense around him. If they don't think that quarterback can be a pocket passer, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do like, well, let's just build a whole system that's like geared towards RPOs and all these different things. Like they're telling you they want guys who play a certain way and can stand in the pocket and also get under center, because that's something Deshaun didn't necessarily like to do either. And do play action and throw the football downfield and stand in the pocket and make some good decisions and make good decisions. Because we know decision-making has been the number one thing that they've highlighted this entire offseason. Guys who fit that billing in the draft, because this is where we kind of go from here. I don't see that like Shedeur Sanders is number one on that list. Guys even said it himself. He is his best quality as a quarterback is that he is extremely accurate, makes good decisions, doesn't turn the ball over, and despite how bad his offensive line was last year, he limited his turnovers, which was an impressive thing for him. Somebody like Tyler Shuck is of that ilk. Somebody like Will Howard, I think, can be of that ilk, but maybe a little less so because he has that running ability to his game. Jackson Dart has some running ability to his game, and maybe they want some of that because he can be a little bit of an athlete. But I think Jackson Dart's coming into the league sort of focused on being a pocket passer. And so that's where the Jalen Milroe thing is interesting, because I do think the Browns like Jalen Milroe. And it's beyond the Tommy Rees connection. I think that's part of it. But his biggest skill, his biggest quality is the best quality about his game is that he's this freak athlete, right? And somebody's going to draft him because of that. But is it going to be the Browns, who just spent the last 2 to 3 years catering an offense to a guy who's a freak athlete and doing everything that was going to make that person comfortable, when that wasn't necessarily what their offensive-minded head coach does best, or it wasn't a system that was going to work based on what Kevin Stefanski's system sort of calls for? Like, they want somebody who can run that system. And I don't know if that's Jalen Milroe or not. Now, I'm sure Jalen Milroe wants to try to be a pocket passer, but his athleticism can't be denied. And anybody who's going to cap that and not utilize that is using Jalen Milroe, I think, the wrong way, because I think that's something that's going to help him get comfortable in the NFL and then maybe build a pocket passing thing and other things to his game off of that. So understanding that and sort of reading between the lines here, I listen, I'm not going to rule out Jalen Milroe at this point because I do think the Browns like him and have interest in him. But it just got me thinking, does he fit the quarterback room that this team is clearly signaling they are trying to build? And as things stand right now, I say no. So maybe they don't go Jalen Milroe and they actually do end up with a Tyler Shuck, as I had in my mock draft, because that feels like something that is more on par with the direction the quarterback room and the offense is kind of headed right now. Again, could mean nothing. Maybe they want some diversity in their quarterback room. And when I say that, I mean like in terms of the varying skill sets that they have. And Milroe is somebody who does bring that athleticism to the table. And so if they're trying to add somebody who has a different sort of skill set, I can understand that. But I wonder if this is kind of giving us an indication as to where their heads are at and what they're trying to build in terms of a quarterback room and the types of players that they'll look at that position next week during the draft. I mentioned Kenny Pickett's name. He's part of this quarterback competition. He doubled down this weekend on his goals while he's here in Cleveland. If he has it his way, he's going to be starting. I say if that happens, something went terribly, terribly wrong. We will talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, We're taking a look at the draft prospects and picking one that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased strength and power needed to push the Cleveland Browns forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada clear-cut player of the week is Shedeur Sanders. I've been saving it. Some say he's an arrogant and brash player. I say he's confident and capable of achieving greatness at the next level. He's battle-tested and rugged from his time at Jackson State in Colorado and mentally equipped to lead a team under center. It's clear that our player of the week is here, ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Alrighty, so Kenny Pickett over the weekend had some pretty bold comments about how he views his role in the Cleveland Browns offense. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like, Kenny Pickett to me is here as a backup. And I think the Browns signed him with the intention that he would be sort of a backup option in the room and a solid back. I think he's a good backup. Like, I think that's a good player to have as a backup player. I think we can say they upgraded the position from Dorian Thompson-Robinson to Kenny Pickett, even though they had to give up a 5th-round pick to get him. But I think that's kind of true. I think that's a fair thing to say, that he's an upgrade as a backup quarterback. Now, he has different plans, though. And he said this when he had his introductory press conference here in Cleveland, where he basically said, I'm coming here trying to compete for the job, and that's what I've been told I'll get a chance to do. Now, he said via the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review, he showed up at Pittsburgh's spring game, I guess, this past weekend, and he was asked about whether or not he's going to be the starter. And his comments were essentially, that's the plan, man. I'm not going there to hang out. I want to go play. I'm excited, been working hard for it, taking it one day at a time. And so here's where I'm at with this. I respect the fact that Kenny Pickett has this mentality. And honestly, listen, do you really want a quarterback? Any quarterback. Whether you like Kenny Pickett, whether you ragged on him in Pittsburgh when he was in Pittsburgh, or you hated him, or you thought there was always some potential there, he just needed a better opportunity or something. No matter how you feel about him, do you really want any quarterback showing up to your team and basically being like, yeah, I'm just here to be a backup. I know what my role is. I mean, in some respects, Jameis was kind of like that because he understood, he was coming to help be a support system for Deshaun Watson. And he knew that they were going to start Deshaun Watson by the nature of his contract and all those different things. But in the situation the Browns are in this year, where it's like, okay, you don't have a clear-cut starter. Like, this thing is very wide open. Do you really want a quarterback who's about to step into an open competition showing up and being like, yeah, I'm good with just being the backup? No, you want these guys to all be saying, I'm here to compete. I'm here to try to earn the job. I want to give it my all. And so I respect the fact that Kenny Pickett is saying these things. I respect the fact that he has the right mentality about trying to attack this thing and trying to earn the starting quarterback job for the Cleveland Browns in 2025. That's what you should want from anybody who's coming in, whether it's the quarterback position or a different position. You want them to try to compete, and you want them to have that type of attitude on their shoulders or in their head. Now, with that said, if Kenny Pickett is the starting quarterback next year in week 1, I think something went very, very wrong. And what I mean by that is, like, either Joe Flacco was a complete disaster that you have to start Kenny Pickett instead of him. Somebody gets hurt like Flacco or whatever, or this rookie that you draft is just so developmental. And I kind of feel like Jalen Milroe would fall into that bucket if it was true that he's just nowhere near ready to touch the field. Like, all due respect to Kenny Pickett, he could earn the job. I just don't think that that's going to happen. And I don't know. Like, I know I said on Friday that the Flacco signing doesn't guarantee he's the starter. And I do think that's true. Like, this does scream open competition, especially when you look at the contract he signed, right? $4 million guaranteed, has a chance to get to $13 million in incentives. And some of that, I'm sure, is playing time, like playing a certain amount of games. We'll see if he gets to those things. But that's the other thing, is like, Flacco's coming in here. He wants to be a starter. As much as I said, and I stand by this to a degree, like, the leadership part that Flacco brings to the table, that's important. That's an important piece of his addition to this room, and why I think it makes sense that they added him on a number of levels, but especially from that one. So there's that element. There's also the fact that Flacco, I said it on Friday that he can mentor a young guy, and I know he doesn't really want to come in and just have that be his role. He's coming here trying to compete. He wants to earn the job. He wants that extra bonus money that he's able to make, or the incentive-based money that he's able to make by playing and starting and leading this team. So I get all that. But I still think like he doesn't necessarily like that. That's not what he's viewing his goal as. That's not what he's coming in here trying to do. He has the same mentality as Kenny Pickett. Like, I want to start. I want to be the guy. And so I think Flacco should have the edge here, especially knowing the system. I think he's, even at 40, like, he's going to be a more efficient player in this offense than I think Kenny Pickett's going to be. But maybe Kenny Pickett, this is his revival, and he ends up like Sam Darnold. I don't know. I just don't see that happening. So to me, the way this room is setting up, it sets the stage for Flacco starts the year. Let me go back a little further. You have an open competition starting here, coming up in the next couple weeks when OTAs open up, and you go through May and spring and all this different stuff, veteran minicamp, then training camp, open competition, see who really earns the job, and you call it an open competition between Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and a rookie. And then by the time training camp ends, Flacco emerges and you say, he's our guy. We trust him. He knows the offense, whatever. Maybe at some point you go to Kenny Pickett before you go to the rookie, but it feels like this sets the stage for Flacco to pave the way for one of Pickett and then the rookie, or maybe just straight up the rookie, whoever you end up with. If it's Shedeur Sanders, like I mentioned, he's probably ready to do that sooner rather than later. If it's Tyler Shuck, same sort of thing applies. Maybe a chance to do that sooner rather than later. If it's somebody like Jalen Milroe, I do think Jalen Milroe is still going to play in his rookie season, because if you're the Browns and you draft if you don't take a quarterback at 2 and you take somebody like Milroe or Dart, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't play that guy at least somewhat this next season, because you have to figure out, like, what do we have in this player before you go into the draft next year and decide if you're going to take another quarterback, like take another swing at the quarterback, or maybe even take a bigger swing at a quarterback if next year's class is the bee's knees, as everybody says it's going to be. So I think, to me, I'm already going into this year expecting that multiple quarterbacks are going to play. And I admire Kenny Pickett saying he's going to try to earn this job, and I think that's the mentality you should have. But I still believe it's Flacco's job to lose at this time, despite the fact that it's going to be an open competition, and that they'll probably go into the season, like, because of the comfortability factor here and the history that already exists between Flacco and Stefanski in this offense, that he has the inside track. And like I said, maybe that means Pickett plays at some point, but I don't necessarily see him coming out victorious in this quarterback competition, but we'll see. That's what the spring and summer workouts and all that are for. So another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this week. I'm thinking about trying to get a guest on leading up to the draft, obviously, and we'll have some other great content as we get closer and closer to that pivotal time of year, especially this year for the Browns. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure you make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.